when I first moved to Chicago, actually right before I moved to Chicago, it was just over a year ago. The very first restaurant I heard about was Fat Rice. A friend of mine said, "That place is killer, dude. You gotta go check it out." So that's exactly how he sounds. So it was really cool when I heard that Abe was able to come here and talk to us. Chef John was able to collaborate with Abe and his team and do an inspired meal to the cuisine of Macau, which is a blend. It's like so many cuisines. It's a blend of the people and of the food and of the people that came into the area, Southeast Asia and the sailors from Portugal, using the methods and the spices that came from the people that were there. Chef, did you learn anything today?
I just learned that there's a good range of food out there that I still haven't cooked or tasted myself. So this is very exciting to have a good variation of meatloaf and chicken, and the vegetables we did today came out great. And I think we did Abe proud with the food today, and we had a lot of compliments. So it was very interesting to see the flavors we put together. Great combination of flavors. So I got to give my hat off to Abe, and I thought you guys enjoyed the food today, so I'm very excited.
Cool. Thank you, Chef.
Very happy to bring you from Fat Rice in Logan Square, Chef Abraham Conlon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Abe, it's great to have you here at Google. Welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor, really. Yeah. Thank you. Look at all these familiar, wonderful faces that come to Fat Rice. Thank you, everybody.
Absolutely. And I'm personally super excited in thinking about any restaurant I've ever owned merchandise from. I think Fat Rice would be that restaurant. You guys have mastered a lot with marketing, and your food is fantastic, especially just the mashup of different cuisines, different cultures, from Portuguese to Chinese to Indian, really inspired by the culture of Macau.
Yes.
So wanted to take a step back just about the restaurant, about the book, in thinking about how it's a mashup in and of itself. It's like a graphic novel, it is a travelogue, travel diary, all of these wonderful things. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Well, even my background is a little bit of a mashup. I grew up in a Portuguese-American family. My mother was Portuguese, and her family was from the Azores and from Madeira. And my father was Irish. My grandfather was a fire chief in Lowell, Massachusetts, which is considered an all-American city, and because of its ethnic diversity. And one of the largest populations that we had was Southeast Asian, so mainly Cambodian, Laotian, but also Thai, Vietnamese as well. So I was always exposed to those flavors at a young age. I had Thai friends that would bring me like fermented pork sausages with chilies and garlic, or like little shrimp paste like wrapped up in a piece of tin foil that they would have for a snack, and try to like freak me out with it. And I actually started really liking these flavors, and I started cooking young, interested in food at an early age, and then began cooking professionally at the age of 15. And this was in the 90s, right, where lots of the kind of term Asian fusion came about, and all chefs were going to Southeast Asia or going to China, incorporating ingredients and flavors into their basically French-based techniques. Mm-hmm. So I saw this in the kitchens that I was working in, and I was always interested in educating myself. I had a subscription to Saveur magazine, and in 1999 I read an article called Original Fusion by Margaret Sheridan, who's actually a Tribune writer. She's here in Chicago, and the piece was a 7 or 8 page piece speaking of Macau and talking about how the food of Macau, more specifically Macanese food, blends Chinese and Portuguese and Southeast Asian and Indian flavors. And I said, wow, there's this place that includes my heritage and the flavors and my culinary interests. So I vowed, I said, I'm going to go there someday. And within this article, she was speaking, and this was in 1999, right before the handover from the Portuguese government to the Chinese government of Macau, and stating that lots of Macanese people were leaving Macau, they were going to Brazil, they were going to California, they were going elsewhere, and that the cuisine was in danger. And she was speaking to a few chefs, of which now are my friends, coincidentally, and how they were trying to preserve their culture through their cuisine. And I vowed to go there someday, and I kind of forgot about it. I worked my way up through many fine dining kitchens around the United States, from New York to DC to Miami, California, ended up in Chicago. And yeah, and then did a lot of things in that time period. My business partner, Adrienne Lo, and we opened a supper club called X Marks, which we focused on. We didn't focus on any particular cuisine. We opened it up to explore any cuisine that we wanted to. We wanted to understand what Lebanese cuisine was, what Egyptian cuisine was, what Laotian cuisine was. And we would educate ourselves as much as possible, shop in the local markets. Chicago has a great diverse population. You have a Devon with it's great Indian stores, all the spices and exotic fruits, and then Little Vietnam or Argyle Street, which Southeast, a lot of the Southeast Asian markets there. So Chinatown, of course. So we explore these areas and then gather as many things as we could, and usually things that we didn't know how to cook, bring them back. Use Google a lot, and essentially try to figure out what to do with these things and how to make tasty food. It wasn't always authentic or traditional, but we applied these ingredients to the best of our knowledge and tried to educate ourselves the best way we could. And then I think after a few 5 years and a few cease and desist letters from the lovely city of Chicago, we said we have to open a real restaurant. And in that time, slightly before that, Adrienne's father encouraged us to go to China. And he wanted to go to Sichuan province. And he said, well, we're also going to go to Hong Kong too. And I was like, Hong Kong? Wait, that's like right across the way from Macau. Macau is just an hour's ferry ride across from Hong Kong. I said, well, we have to go to Macau. I have to see what this is all about, and I can't let this go any further, because Macau and that magazine always popped in my mind over the years. And I worked for great chefs that were incorporating Asian ingredients and European flavors all together, but that was of their own doing. And I wanted to explore the cuisine that was the result of mixed cultured families. So, and that's exactly what the food of Macau and Macanese food entails. So when it was time to open the restaurant, we never settled on Macanese food. We said, we're going to cook everything. We want to cook Indian food, we want to cook Chinese food, we want to cook Southeast Asian food, we want to cook Iberian, Portuguese food, but how do we do it? And we kept coming back to these books that we had found in Macau. And interestingly enough, the one restaurant that we went to was Restaurant Rikeshu. And in the story is in the book, but at Restaurant Rikeshu, we found a lovely woman named Donna Ida de Jesus. And she had this really casual cafeteria and fluorescent lights, just everything in steam pans. She had things that I recognized from my travels in Brazil, feijoada, but with cabbage and red beans and pig ears. Or a stew called pato de cabidela, which was a duck cooked with its own blood. Or minchi, which was a ground meat dish with 3 soy sauces and Worcestershire sauce and bay leaf. And I got a little bit of everything. I said, just give me a little bit of everything, put it on the plate, I was starving. And within a few bites, I simultaneously tasted all of my culinary life's experiences. I tasted the Portuguese sausage that I grew up eating in Lowell, Massachusetts. I tasted my travels in China. I tasted my travels in Brazil, like all in one bite. And I was like, this tastes like home to me, but I'm thousands of miles away. And this is fascinating. We talked to Ida. I said, how do we learn more about this? She handed us a few books. She said, you can start here. How long are you in town for? Well, we leave in 5 hours. Well, there isn't much more you can do. I would recommend that you go next door to my disciple, Donna Vittoria at Apomac, which is a Macanese cultural center that has a restaurant. Incidentally, Rikeshu is a restaurant that acts as a Macanese cultural center, so they're right next to each other. And but she said you can't go there because they're closed for their monthly cleaning. I was like, monthly cleaning? Like, come on. So inevitably, we didn't get to go there. Got back onto the ferry, went to Hong Kong, came back to Chicago, and again, kind of forgot about it. And then when it was time to open the restaurant, we needed this elevator pitch. We needed this thing to tell people what we were doing. And frantically looking through these cookbooks, arroz gordo, translation, fat rice, kept popping up. And I said, this is simple enough. And I think that this can tie everything together. The food is historically important. We don't have much knowledge of it, but we have as much as there is. And so we scoured every inch of the internet that we could to find as much information as we could. We started developing our own dishes and developing our own takes on Macanese cuisine. And yeah, fat rice was born. So I know it's a long-winded kind of story, but I didn't take the traditional path, and I'm very happy for that.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to a certain degree. And one of the things that popped out to me was when you were talking about Macanese cuisine, it seems like it's in some ways kind of subjective. It could be from different
household to different household. Well, the interesting thing about Macanese cuisine, and moving forward, kind of global Portuguese cuisine in general that happens in various communities, is that there's a lot of pride behind it. And my mom makes the best minchi. Like, no, my mom makes the best minchi. Well, what's in your mom's minchi? You think I'm telling you? So a lot, and unfortunately, the dialect, the patois, which is a mix of Portuguese, Cantonese, and Sinhalese, it's not written down. So the language is not written down, so therefore the recipes aren't written down. And even when the recipes are written down, they are written in the quantities are written in what the ingredients cost 50 years ago. So 10 cents worth of sugar, 20 cents worth of egg yolks. How could anybody decipher that? So it was difficult. There are many traditions, and in the book we explain kind of what we know and the varying kind of theories of where the dishes evolved from, and then what we do in the restaurant. We always strive to use traditional practices, traditional techniques, traditional ingredients as much as possible, and that was in effect fueled from seeking out the best ingredients in Chicago's local markets. Like, you can ask me anything, where to get X, I can tell you in Chicago, and preservative and MSG free also.
Excellent. So when we have Q&A a little bit later, folks can probably ask about the MSG and whatnot.
Sure.
So when you're thinking about Macanese cuisine, what are the flavors and what are the spices and what are the things that represent that to you?
I think the thing about Macau, and that when we talk about Macau, so 500 years ago, the world was split in two by the two major naval powers, the Portuguese and the Spanish. Everything west of the Cape Verdean Islands and Brazil belonged to the Spanish for exploration. Everything east to the Portuguese. So the Portuguese went from Portugal to Africa to Brazil to India to Malaysia, Japan, and ultimately to Macau, and Indonesia in there as well. So that is all of the things that Macanese cuisine entails. So you have chili pepper, potato, tomato, from South America. You have tamarind and spices and turmeric from India. You have the black pepper and clove from the Spice Islands in Indonesia. You have bay leaf and olive oil from Portugal. You have soy sauce from Macau, as well as many other fermented products. One of the hallmarks of Macanese cuisine, and not really found elsewhere, is bali shao. Bali shao is an aged fermented shrimp paste that incorporates bay leaf, chili, lemon, and black pepper. And it's made with small little shrimp. And it's used as the base for a good amount of dishes in Macanese cuisine. And it's said that if a new Portuguese man was introduced into a Macanese family, the mom would kind of test his loyalty by cooking something with bali shao and see if he would run away screaming or if he would stay and eat. So yeah, there are many interesting flavors. I mean, the other thing is that these are essentially derivatives of hearty Portuguese dishes, you know, kind of made to beef up sailors, right? So you have like really lots of meat-laden dishes. Sometimes there's rice and potato and bread, and not many vegetables at all. Lots of vinegar is used as a tool for preservation, as well as spices and chilies. Salt cod is another a big part of Macanese cuisine and kind of global Portuguese cuisine in general. And yeah, those are the flavors that really kind of drew me to this cuisine, as well as kind of some of the things being kind of just over the top. And like tacho, for example, you know, tacho is a version of Portuguese cozido, which is a boiled dinner. Tacho really just means pot, but the Macanese adapted the dish by adding, instead of Portuguese sausage, they added Chinese sausage, lapchang, or instead of ham, they added lap yok, which is the Chinese-style bacon, adding the bali shao shrimp paste to fortify the broth, as well as chicken, pig strauters, puffed pig skin, cabbage, many root vegetables, and there's probably salted duck. There's many things in there that I'm probably forgetting, but it was just kind of mind blower to me, especially in a day and age of kind of over the top cuisine with turduckens and all these things that American chefs do, and seeing that like, wow, this actually happens somewhere, and it's not just done by some kind of ego-driven chef. And you know, this is something that has happened over the years, and it's a great feeling to be able to celebrate that at the restaurant Fat Rice and through the book.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about the book. Again, it's a mashup. It has this wonderful travel sort of a narrative with it, with your travels in Macau. Also, one of the things I liked about it is the design and the artwork.
Sure.
It's like a graphic novel for some of the recipes themselves, with even illustrations of you, and I think illustrations of Adrienne in there cooking dishes.
And some of the cooks and
Yeah.
everything. Yeah, no. I think when we were creating the book, we wanted to really have a visual representation of what Macanese cuisine was, global Portuguese cuisine was, and the restaurant itself. And from the beginning, when I found this logo or this font, it looked like little fat rice kernels, and I was like, this is perfect. And you know, I got a little bit of pushback. They're like, it might be a little too cartoony, it might be a little too weird. I'm like, yeah, but this is the restaurant has a live open fire. We have big meat hooks hanging from the ceiling with woks hanging. We have old vintage cast iron and clay pots. Everything's kind of dark. The music is loud. And I said, I want to make this fun. And I want to make this accessible. And I said, and I started toying around. I'm an expert at paint. Like not painting, but paint. I started taking old comic book covers and putting Fat Rice on top of it and saying, wow, this could be a really cool aesthetic. So we didn't really have a sign either. The only sign that we have is Restaurante, right? And it's And that's all it says because we wanted to incorporate into the kind of Latin community. But next to it in Chinese characters it says Portuguese cuisine. And I'll get into this in a minute. I'll get back to this in a minute because even in Macau, there is no such thing as Macanese cuisine. It's Portuguese cuisine. Because once you mix with someone else who is not full-blood Chinese, you are no longer Chinese. You are now Portuguese. So even even the Macanese community within Macau has a hard time being recognized as their own group. So when we put those characters on the top of the window, the top of the door, inevitably we had Mandarin speaking, Cantonese speaking people come in and say, "What are you doing here? Do you have pork chop sandwich? Do you have egg tart? Do you have African chicken?" All of which Macau is known for, not necessarily Macanese cuisine, interestingly enough. But so it's a big topic. The place was a little bit intimidating on the inside, so I wanted to have some kind of fun visuals to go along with it, and I was like, let's do comic book posters as on the windows to kind of show what we're doing inside, to give a kind of fun vibe. And the first one we designed with a friend who was a graphic artist. And it was just for the menu, and we had it on the window. And then about 2 weeks after we opened, Sarah Beacon, the artist from the book, came in and had a meal, went home, and made a blog post on her blog, Sawsome, and then tagged us on Twitter. And it was a picture of our Portuguese chicken, the pot guy, and a cross-section, all the ingredients nicely labeled out in this kind of cartoony form. And I said, this is the person that I've been looking for. This is the person that I need. And so I immediately contacted her. I said, this is what I'm trying to do. I want to work with you. Get in here. So she started, she helped us with the t-shirts, she helped us with the menus, and helped us with the posters when we wanted to do, and one of the first poster she did was the Attack of the Chili Clam poster. And we had, and so we had this giant chili clam, and not a Macanese dish, kind of a theoretical combination of my past experiences from being from fried clam shacks from Lowell, Massachusetts, and Chinatown steamed surf clam. And it's a big surf clam with rice noodles and steamed tongue portion, and then the collar was fried in kind of New England clam shack style. And but that's why he has kind of noodles hanging out of his mouth, and he was served on a bed of seaweed. So it was our way of presenting a fun visual representation of what was actually happening in the restaurant, and people are like, what is that chili? What is that poster? That poster is awesome. Well, that's actually one of our dishes, and here it is on the menu, and inevitably people would go, it would draw them into the dish, and it proved helpful, especially moving forward when we even more so within the first couple months kind of fully committed to Macanese cuisine, and because in the beginning we had some Sichuan dishes, we had some Indian dishes, we had some kind of very global dishes, and when people started recognizing us as a Macanese restaurant, I said, okay, get rid of the Sichuan dishes, get rid of the Northern Indian dishes, and let's really just zone in. And I think when we did that, there were some foreign things, like pato de cabidela, the duck cooked with its own blood. And that doesn't sound that appetizing to people. So we made a poster that was like very Bugs Bunny-esque. It had a duck chasing our little mascot, the Gallo de Barcelos, and with a cleaver and a trail of blood behind him, with the the pot with the logs under the little fire, and people would say, "What is that poster?" and then would essentially lead them into the pato de cabidela, and then we could say this is originally a Portuguese dish that could be made with rabbit, or it could be made with pig. And in Macau they do it with duck, and in Macau they add tamarind, and they add maybe a little bit of soy sauce. So it really kind of opened the conversation in an easy, approachable way. And when we were designing the book, we really wanted to just bring all those elements in. I mean, is a lot of stuff that we did specifically for the book, but most of the posters and everything were already in existence.
Yeah.
So, and Sarah Beacon did an amazing job, and we have a wonderful collaborative relationship now, and it's amazing. Sometimes I'll come out with her with 2 sentences, and next thing you know, it's real and it's visual, and now she does an amazing job.
That's awesome. And another thing that I really like about the book and the illustrations is that you even take a step back with basics of cooking and basics of how to chop vegetables and a lot of these very, very simple things. So the book itself seems to be really easy for a beginner, even someone who might not have a lot of experience cooking.
Exactly, and we wanted it to be accessible to a lot of different people. We wanted it to be accessible to home cook. We wanted it to be accessible for the professional cook that, for me, Fat Rice was a place that I essentially had gone through cooking in many kitchens and learned my techniques of how to roast a chicken, how to make a stock, then how to cook, things like foie gras, and then into molecular gastronomy, and then into ethnic food, and then then I came to Macanese cuisine and global Portuguese cuisine in general, and I was able to kind of find home there, but we wanted it to be accessible to everybody. And we wanted it to even be accessible to people who didn't want to cook out of it. Maybe they just wanted to know a little bit about history or just look at the cool pictures, and that's why we did have this kind of mixing and mashing of Sarah's illustration and Dan Goldberg's amazing photography, and have some information and some photographs about the restaurant, and then obviously in Macau and other related places like Malacca, Malaysia, and Singapore where we went. So, yeah. We wanted to be, and one thing that I really love is, I keep wanting to open the book and show you guys. The one thing I really love, and it was a good idea, is, and I'm not sure whose idea it was, but it was the comic strips of wok cookery. Because wok cookery happens so fast, and trust me, I've been online, because I'm the guy trying to slow down the YouTube videos. Like, what did he just throw in there? What does he throw in there? Because they're just like, and it's done. And it can burn. Things can burn so fast. And so we wanted an easy reference point for if you were doing, when you were working in the wok at home, for you to be able to just quickly glance at it and not have to where was I at? Where was the place there? And then next thing you know, you look over, your wok's on fire, the thing's burning, your dog's barking, the fire alarm's going off, so all of that stuff. So it adds as a really cool kind of visual tool.
That's great. Well, folks may be getting kind of hungry around here because right now there's the smell of some Fat Rice cooking right here in the cafe. So just take a dish and pass it down. I think we have 2 different options here, one savory and one sweet. So enjoy. And while you guys are enjoying your dishes, we're going to open up for Q&A in just a couple minutes. So be thinking of some questions for Abe.
I'm just going to speak to what you are actually having right now. So this is camarão com quiabo, which is shrimp with okra. Really simple. Is that what it is? Yeah, okay. Just making sure.
It is what it is.
So a really kind of simple tomato and okra shrimp dish that was shown to us by Florita Alves, who is one of the ambassadors of Macanese cuisine to the world. She goes lots of different places to teach about Macanese cuisine, and we were fortunate enough to be allowed into her home and for her to show us some of these dishes, and this was one of them. We found it really beautifully simple and spicy and aromatic. It smells wonderful. So Florita herself, she is kind of the master cook, but Vitor, her husband, is the curry paste maker. And so in the book, we have Vitor's curry paste, which he ages for years, up to years even. It's a mixture of garlic and onions and many different spices. And to be honest with you, he wouldn't even share with us the recipe at all. So it took a lot of testing and development for us to kind of recreate that within the Fat Rice kitchen. And within the recipes of the book, we give respect to those people who inspired them, and who some of them did. You know, Florita showed us a couple of her. Florita showed us everything. Vitor was holding the real secrets back, but.
So, just in thinking about that, and thinking about just how you've been able to make these organic connections with folks in Macau, in your travels across Asia, technology's played a role.
Technology is huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I would love to hear more about how that's benefited you with the restaurant, and then also even with the book.
Definitely. Well, I think number one, social media is a great place for outreach, and you know, and everything is growing and evolving these days now with Instagram and Twitter, and you know, I don't really even know what Snapchat is, but you know, I know the kids are using it. We're trying to figure it out too. But of course, Google. I mean, not as a plug, but like, you know, that is one of the best tools out there, because I am one of the only people, I don't know, that can come up with Google searches that reveal 2 results. 2. And usually it's Googling something that's Macanese in generally, because again, there's not a lot of information out there. I mean, just at its basic, I was able to reach out to somebody who had a blog. Her name was Juliana Lo, and she had chicken scrawling. She was of Nunya descent, which is Straits-born Chinese, living in Macau. She had a connection to Macanese cuisine because, in fact, Nunya cuisine is one of the precursors to Macanese cuisine, and she befriended some people there. And her husband is a 2 Michelin-starred chef at one of the casinos in Macau. And I said, maybe this person will have some sympathy on me. I'm coming to Macau. I have these appointments with various restaurants, but I need to get into people's homes. I need to understand true Macanese home-style cuisine. And she contacted a few friends, and she was all about it and really opened the doors to us. And it was a really amazing thing that, you know, nowadays, I mean, I come from the time of the Dewey Decimal System and microfiche and all these things where and when we wanted information, you had to go to the library and you hoped they had the book there, because, you know, you couldn't just look something up and it comes up and you get all the information about it. The other thing that I think is interesting is that there is such little information about this that the more information that comes out has the potential to get misconstrued or diluted, and I think it's important that for us that we always kind of go back to, this is what we know. And then this is what we do, and you know, a lot of these things, you know, may not be considered traditional, but we're using traditional methods, traditional ingredients, and trying to stay as true as possible.
So it sounds like in the larger sort of narrative of what you're trying to do, it's beyond just a restaurant, beyond just a book, but it's really about culture and really about preserving a culture and really celebrating that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, you know, especially being American and not having a really solid food culture. I mean, for myself, yes, okay, I'm Portuguese, but I only really ate like Portuguese dishes on the holidays, where we have our bacalhau, salt cod, or our roast pork, or those sort of things, because I ultimately kind of grew up on McDonald's and Burger King.
Didn't we all?
A lot of us did. So I think it's, for me now, this is a way for me to understand my own food culture, and that has been built on other lands and other people's food culture, and to kind of share knowledge that we feel is kind of important and directly connected to the way that we eat today and the way that foods developed over time and what we know of them as today. And essentially, lots of foods that we eat have come from another place, have come from other people. And yes, it is important for us to showcase and in a way preserve and be a spokesperson for Macanese culture, but also through Macanese cuisine and culture, we found that there are other building blocks out there. When we went to Malacca, Malaysia, we just touched on this a little bit, but there is that's beautiful. There is the Portuguese community there that is also interested in preserving their culture, their unique culture, and their unique heritage through their food. The plot thickened a little bit when we went to Malacca, Malaysia, and we visited with Big Ben, who has the Big Ben sambal for baked Portuguese seafood in the book. And he asked me, do I want to learn about old Macanese cuisine, or excuse me, old Portuguese cuisine? I said, I'm not really sure. I want to learn about the natural fusion that happened here. And I trusted him, and the first thing that dropped was lamb vindaloo. The reason why lamb vindaloo dropped and why he called it Old Portuguese cuisine is because that was the dish that the Portuguese brought from Goa, India, to Malaysia. In Malaysia, it definitely got lemongrass and galangal and other spices of that region. But it was a derivative of vindaloo, which was a method of preservation with vinegar and garlic, which again ultimately came from a dish called carne de vinha de Ayush, which is from Portugal, which came from escabeche, which comes from the Middle East. And this dish has evolved in many ways, and even you see it in the Philippines in adobo and other variants on that dish. So now it's kind of opened up the world for me to basically now investigate into how these things evolved and why these things evolved, and showcase the communities that are preserving these cultures and kind of using Fat Rice as a platform to, in effect, bring people together and hopefully share knowledge. This is a very modern take on a dish that we have eaten many times in Macau. This is kind of an example of how we hybridize things a little bit. In Taipa, in Macau, there is a restaurant called Litoral. And Manuela Ferreira and her husband Arminio, they run a restaurant. It's actually probably the most like kind of commercial-ish restaurant other than the Ricaccio and Apomac. And thank you, chef. And you go into Litoral and they have everything. They have that wonderful African Galinha Africana, the African chicken. They even have a shrimp and okra dish, but many, many dishes, stuffed chili prawns, many hallmarks of Macanese cuisine. But one of our favorite things to do is to go there for dessert. And she makes two. One is the coconut gelée, or coconut pudding, and chocolate pudding, which pudding indicates use of agar. And that's why it's kind of snappy, it's kind of crunchy, it's bursting with flavor, and they're just served in little coupe cups, just like straight up coconut pudding, chocolate pudding. But one of my favorite things to do, enjoy an espresso, take a little bit of chocolate, take a little bit of coconut, and kind of alternate and eat in between. And with this one, we tied the room together with just a little bit of caramel and banana. But I really love this, and it's really refreshing, and the texture isn't for everybody, because the Westerners aren't necessarily used to that kind of snappy texture of agar. But I love it, especially with the chocolate, because it really gives you almost this like pure chocolate flavor without fat. So, and that's kind of how our dishes sometimes, evolve. Where in the book, we talk about Manuela and we talk about that whole experience, and we say this is what she does, and this is. But then back at the restaurant, this is what we do, and how do we translate it into kind of a modern restaurant setting with presentation that we charge money for, essentially. So, well, I hope you guys like it. So,
super tasty. So this will be my last question before we open it up to Q&A for the audience. And so, as you're mentioning, kind of going back to the restaurant, Fat Rice has expanded. So you have a bakery now, and then also you have a bar, kind of a speakeasy within the restaurant.
Yeah.
And of course, the book has just dropped. What's next?
Oh, what's next?
How
I
are
don't
you
know.
looking to expand?
Well, I think the bakery was a good move for us because it allows us to do like larger party seatings at nighttime, and then have different offerings during the daytime and things that wouldn't otherwise be able to find their way onto a dinner menu. We do a pang sushi, which is a traditional Malaccan Portuguese pastry with sweet potato brandy dough filled with ground pork with cinnamon and spices, really nice. And the ladies' room lounge, not the bathroom, the ladies' room lounge is a way for us to kind of express the Sin City side of Macau, because it's kind of gambling, excessive, over-the-top stuff. So it's like really dark and red, and there's lots of like pin-up 1920s cigarette ads on the walls, and that's why we call it the ladies' room. But that's a way for us to showcase like terroir and seasonal ingredients, actually by infusing various spirits with local herbs and stuff, because we don't necessarily have the chance to do all that within the cuisines that we celebrate at the restaurant, because there isn't a lot of vegetables necessarily in this type of cuisine. So we do that through the ladies' room lounge. I think what's next, I'm not really sure what's next. I'm really hoping to continue the conversation. There is talks about our wine program. We do go to Portugal to seek out small producers of wine, and then subsequently what happens is the winemaker kind of hijacks your trip and then takes you to all these amazing restaurants and shows you the local specialties, and then those things inevitably find their way onto our menu at the restaurant, as well as the great wines. So I think for us, if we are going to do anything next, we are going to do a little bit more exploration on that side and understand more regional Portuguese cuisine, how regional Portuguese cuisine has been affected by the rest of the world, and do that. I think moving forward, that the items in this book, and don't boo me, that there are not necessarily going to be available at the restaurant anymore. He's crying. I thought you were crying.
Sad face.
So arroz gordo will obviously remain. It might go through some evolutions, but we will be looking at places like Malacca or Goa or East Timor, and I have some travel plans scheduled for the new year to go and see those places firsthand, and hopefully be as lucky as I had with Macau. So.
Nice. So we can expect more evolution.
Expect more evolution. Yeah, only to continue.
All right. So we'll open up for questions. I think Barb has the mic, and so if anyone has a question for Abe, please speak now.
I like how you talked about how you would grab ingredients that you weren't familiar with,
Sure.
and then just kind of see what you could do with them. Were there any that you grabbed and then later you're like, man, this was a huge mistake. Like, this just isn't going to work. This is gross.
Oh, I like this. This is a good story. There's probably a few, but the first thing that comes to mind, we were doing we called it Pilsen Piggy Party. We got a whole pig from a local farm, and we said, okay, well, we're going to go to Pilsen and kind of buy all the auxiliary ingredients and kind of do like a Mexican take on it. We're going to do like, mole rubbed ribs and different, head cheese tacos and that sort of thing. And one thing that we picked up was an agave leaf. And we used the agave leaf as like this platter for these ribs. And it was just big, and it was, I was like, this thing is going to be amazing. I don't know what we're going to use it for. We'll use it as a platter, and then that's it. After the dinner, it kind of hung out for a while. And it was kind of around, and I'm like, what am I going to do with this thing? So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to taste it. I cut a piece, I put it on my tongue, and immediately got the shock of like fire ants or something biting my tongue. And I was like, oh my God, I think I'm allergic to agave. I'm like, let me go Google it. And I go, and it says, yes, the agave plant has a natural defense mechanism that has microcrystalline porcupine-like structures that attack predators when it tries to eat it. My tongue was on fire, and it felt like I had little I guess I did have little cactus spikes in my tongue for like 3 days. It was terrible. I couldn't taste anything. I couldn't eat anything. And then I realized, oh yeah, you have to roast it first. You have to cook it first. And yeah, I was the guinea pig on that one. So don't eat raw agave leaf.
So if you remember anything from this talk.
Yeah, that's definitely.
Raw agave.
Good question.
Hi, Chef. Just wanted to thank you for your work. I had a question. So you mentioned in your talk that when you started your journey, there was, or when Macau was being handed over to China, that there was this talk of the cuisine, like what was going to happen to the cuisine. What has happened now since, we have social media and technology to connect us a little bit more? For example, young culinary students, Portuguese, across the diaspora of this cuisine, like, have they reached out to you? Like, what conversations have you had, with the young people who are interested in this cuisine, and what do you see out of them?
I think we are still in an infancy stage. I think that within the because unfortunately within the community, the people who know how to cook this food are not necessarily on social media because they are older. So we're talking above the age of 50, 60, 70. But what we are seeing is that they are teaching the younger generation, if they are interested, which is rare, because I think when you're a teenager, you really just want to be you, and you just want to be hanging out with your friends. You don't want to be hanging out with grandma, which I think needs to be encouraged more. But I think within the Macanese diaspora, that you do see Facebook and people are, some of my Macanese friends, oh, I made capella today, or I made bafasa today, or this is my grandmother's recipe for this, or I just found this recipe in an old book or something, and I want to share it with people. So I think it is definitely helping, but I think we still gotta be analog about things more and really invest that encouragement in the younger generations. I haven't really seen too many young Portuguese chefs or anything like that really reaching out for it. There is a gentleman who runs he's in Great Britain, called Kay's Kitchen. He's in the UK, Kay's Kitchen, and he goes to Malacca, Malaysia, and speaks with a couple of friends of mine there as well, and eats with them, and then also is bringing that stuff back to the UK and cooking dinners, much like we did before. So I think it is definitely helping, and it is helping the kind of communities come together. But there's still a large effort that needs to be made because, again, like the 3 restaurants I mentioned are really the only restaurants in all of Macau that has one of the highest populations of people on the planet. And those are the only places that we can go, and we know we can get authentic Macanese cuisine other than the home. And even within the home, people are, even though they're trying to preserve their culture through it, people are still relatively protective of recipes and cuisine. But there are people like Florita Alves and our friend Marina Sena Fernandez that are working to promote those things, for sure.
Question.
Thank you. Good question.
Hi, Chef. Would you mind speaking to did you ever come to a feeling when you were first getting started, digging into Macanese food, around who am I to represent it? Was it the imposter syndrome, et cetera? Would you mind speaking to how you found the confidence to continue doing it and be a voice?
Well, I think that is definitely a question now these days. And, if there was someone else that was doing it, I'd be happy, I would be very happy to have some other people, especially in professional, to talk to. I think for me that it has been a passion of mine for years. It does speak to my heritage and to my kind of understanding of world cuisine. And yes, I think there is always that who am I? But for me, it is my interest. It's what I'm interested in. Because here's the thing, I'm half Portuguese and half Irish. And so, but my family's from Madeira and Azores. So, you know, in Madeira and the Azores, they cook pigs in the ground over hot springs and with pineapples. And we all know what Irish cuisine is. So, you know, if I want to be a chef, you know, then we have to kind of push beyond. And I think the more that we responsibly explore other cultures and come into contact with people of different backgrounds, we're able to not only understand them, but understand ourselves more. And as long as I think we're being true and representing to the best of our ability, then I don't see a problem with it. But that is definitely a question, and I'm sure that's not the first time I'm going to be asked that question. Thank you.
That's great. That's a great question. Okay, so we have time for one last question. All right.
Better make it good. So thank you very much for coming today. I feel like you spoke a lot about the challenges and understanding the cuisine when you're over in Macau and understanding the different recipes, which language barriers I'm sure came into play.
Definitely.
Targeting such a niche geographic region and bringing it to Chicago, I feel, and maybe this is the wrong assumption, there are some roadblocks to overcome and some education when opening the restaurant. So I'd love to hear kind of what you encountered and how you overcame those.
Sure, that's an excellent question. And I think there are definitely going to be roadblocks with any kind of cuisine that is foreign, or any concept that's really foreign. And I think really your delivery is where it, you know, is what it's all about. I mean, we could have named the restaurant Bali Shao. We could have named it Capella. We could have named it all these other things that we would then have to further explain. Well, what is that? And that's why fat rice was so integral into like the initiation, just much like the posters were, because people could come in and they don't even know what, they didn't even need to know what Macanese cuisine was or global Portuguese cuisine was. They just said, I went to fat rice, what'd you have? I don't know, it was awesome. and that was really the goal. And I think one, we came out strong in that we didn't have a hamburger, we didn't have a mac and cheese, we didn't have, mac and cheese is not a Macanese dish, just so everyone knows. Sorry. But no, we didn't have these kind of common things that other people, you know, you're supposed to have, and people found that it was delicious, and it was a little bit foreign, but it was comforting in a way, and I think then building that trust, you know, getting people kind of acquainted with your concept, and then building that trust, and you know, now I didn't put the duck with pigs with duck with its own blood on the menu the first week, but you know, that came with time, and that came with trust. And I think you know, we're seeing that with a lot of kind of emerging cuisines now. You know, whether that's Peruvian or Filipino or Indian even. You know, there is definitely like a form of trepidation on the consumer's part, but I think there's also that adventurous side that I think people, especially with kind of food TV now, and they want that experience. They want to be sitting next to Tony Bourdain eating noodles on the side of a Vietnamese stall on the side of the road, and I think there's no other way to do that other than to kind of explore through local restaurants and armchair travel through books. So,
it's amazing.
Thank you.
All right, well, Abe Conlon, we really appreciate you coming to Google. Please give a warm Google applause to Abe Conlon and Fat Rice.